Welcome to the Widows Collective, where grief meets hope, healing, and community. I'm Lauren Lentz, grief coach, fellow widow, and the heart behind this space. There is life before loss, and then there is life after. If you're here, it likely means your life has been turned upside down by the death of your person. Maybe you've just found yourself in this new world that feels unrecognizable, or maybe you've been walking it for a while, trying to figure out what healing looks like now. I want you to know you are not alone. This podcast is a gathering place for widows living in the after. Together, we'll name the ache, honor the love, and share tools, truths, and stories that help you feel supported along the way. My hope is that every episode gives you a sense of community, comfort, and permission to meet yourself exactly where you are. Hello, and welcome back to episode 5, The Grief Hangover. There were so many times, especially in those first couple of years, where I would move through a milestone day, be it a birthday, a wedding anniversary, the death anniversary, you name it. And everyone around me would allow me to feel so loved and cared for. And these days for myself tended to be oddly peaceful. It was like my body, my mind, my spirit, everything knew that the day needed to go on without a hitch. And then the next day, everything would come crashing down. I'd wake up and I would feel alone, extremely anxious and confused, often also disappointed in myself. How did I make it through this big day and all of the anticipatory grief that was showing up for me along the way? And then here I am. I thought yesterday was okay. I thought I did the hard part, and today feels extra hard. What did I do wrong? So after this happened to me more than a few times, I started associating it with a hangover. The day itself feels lighter, somehow manageable, and even peaceful at times. But the next day, all of that held togetherness, if you will, comes undone. And you wake up feeling the weight of everything all at once, tired, raw, and a little shaken. And so I started calling it the grief hangover. I'm sure I wasn't the first to say it, and I know I won't be the last. I also don't know that grief hangover is officially a term, but more than a few of us in the grief space use it, and it's become a way to describe that come down feeling after a big emotionally charged day. With the wave of holidays and the heaviness of many dates approaching, I thought it's important to give this experience its own space here on the podcast. And for many of you, you probably selected this episode because the grief hangover already resonated with you. And you're over here shaking your head thinking, yes, absolutely, this has happened to me. And what's wrong with me? And this is what we don't talk about enough. A grief hangover doesn't mean you're regressing. It doesn't mean you're failing, that you did anything wrong. There's nothing that you could have done to prevent the hangover from happening. And it's actually a sign that you did something really hard, and your heart deserves time to recover from the emotional overload that it's experienced on the day of and the day leading up to that milestone event. So if you've ever woken up the day after a milestone and wondered, where did all my strength go? This episode is for you. Instead of keeping these experiences in the shadows, because we often do that, these are things that we struggle to share with other people for fear that they may not understand, or treating them like a personal failure that you should have done more so that this wouldn't be happening, we're bringing them to the light. We're naming them here, we're normalizing them, and we're learning how to take care of ourselves when they show up. which is why I'm super grateful to be joined by someone who truly understands this terrain, not just because she's studied it, but because she's actually lived it. Julia Warren is a fellow widow, a grief coach, a yoga therapist, and a dear friend who has navigated many versions of these emotional hangovers herself. Julia, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're so welcome, Lauren. I'm just so grateful to be here with you.
So today we're going to be going over the infamous grief hangover. And the reason why you came to mind in particular was because I was thinking of this topic the other day and how it really plays such a large role in this season that we're moving into and the tenderness of the holidays and everything that comes up. And then you posted something on your Instagram account about it. And I was like, okay, I need to have her as a guest speaker. So I'm so glad that you are here and you're going to be able to speak to this topic today.
I'm really looking forward to it. What a cool synchronicity. When you reached out, that's all I could think about. It must have been totally kismet that we were supposed to have this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. So what I've come to notice over the years is that the days leading up to a milestone can hold so much weight, right? The anticipation, the worry about how the actual day might feel, the pressure that we put on ourselves to navigate it well. And then sometimes when the day arrives, it's surprisingly softer than expected. And we are surrounded by love and distractions. And we have this deep sense of meaning that everyone is there for our person. And it's really fills up your cup on that day. And then it passes. And the tension and those expectations for how the day needed to show up all release, and the grief that's kind of just been quietly building up over the last few weeks before that milestone event has space to rise. And it's like this is when this crash tends to come in the day or the days that follow. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think is happening emotionally or physically that causes everything to surface?
Yeah, absolutely, Lauren. And I think this is a really important conversation to have, especially if you are new to the widowhood or grief experience, to understand potentially what could be occurring in the body and why. And so, from the lens of the work that I do and in my own experience as well, what I really think is happening, especially on a physical standpoint, is all related back to the trauma that may be holding in our nervous system. And so what I mean by that is, from my experience and watching clients move through this as well, it seems often, like you mentioned, we are bracing as we lead up to whatever anniversary may be occurring, whether it's the death date or a holiday or a birthday, or maybe it's some important date to you and your person that isn't really understood by others around you. And regardless what it might be, the body is bracing because it knows that something is heading our way that could have a big emotional release, right? So we feel physically our bodies tense, the muscles might feel more tired, or it may be the opposite. We might be struggling with sleep. There may be issues with our appetite increasing or decreasing. There's a lot of different things that can happen here leading up to these big dates. And then, like you mentioned, when those dates hit and the body on a nervous system level notices, okay, I have more support on this day that maybe held trauma, or this day that holds a lot of importance to us. And then afterwards, the nervous system has this big letdown. The body has this massive letdown because it was just searching for multiple days for some sort of activation, some sort of danger. It was really heightened and bracing. And so then when the next day hits, our body has this massive come down that we're talking about with the grief hangover, just like our emotions. Maybe as we were bracing leading up to this state, we were preparing for these big emotions, holding them in, whatever it might be. And then when the day arrived, maybe there wasn't space to feel the emotions. Maybe we were masking in a lot of ways to help other people in our lives, whether it's our children or parents or partners or whoever else may be in our life currently. Maybe we held those emotions in. So then the next day comes and it invites in this big release because it seems like whatever expectation or thought we placed on the date itself is no longer there, and the body feels safe enough in that moment to fully let it all go.
I love that, feeling safe enough too. And masking, I never really thought of that perspective, that we really just in holding it all together might be masking what's really going on inside of us consciously or unconsciously.
Absolutely. I see that a lot in clients and also in my own journey. With my children, I catch myself on not often, but time to time these days where I'm at in my grief experience, but definitely early on, I put on a happy face for them. And so if that's something that anybody listening to this finds themselves doing, I'd love to invite in compassion for you in that moment, because all we're doing is our best, and it's okay to tend to other people around us as long as we still allow ourselves to feel into what we need to feel as well.
Yeah. I have this tendency to say that grief is as unique as a fingerprint. And I know that there are some similarities that we share, absolutely. But I do feel like our own lived experiences kind of lend the grief hangover to look differently for each of us. And so I kind of spoke to the fact that for me personally, it's like I feel raw and exposed and very, very anxious the next day. And then I'll have guilt or feelings of doing it wrong and showing up in a way that maybe I could have made changes and then I wouldn't feel so yucky the next day. How would you describe the hangover for you and your personal experience?
Mm. It's definitely shifted. I would say in the first few years, I really resonated with what you shared. I would feel anxious or uprooted or shame myself into a place of hoping I had done something different. Nowadays, I really look at the grief hangover as an opportunity for me to truly invite in rest and bring that word compassion even deeper into my experience. So for me, it shows up a lot as just exhaustion. Usually the day after a big date, I may feel tired. I may just feel a little more disconnected from my day-to-day responsibilities and just a little more run down. And what I attribute that to is, for me anymore, the big dates still do have emotion to them. And I've learned that how I can support myself is really feeling those emotions on that day, no longer masking, like I mentioned, some of the feelings or with the people in my life. And so for me, it's like the exhaustion comes in because I did allow myself the space to feel so much on that day. And so those days truly are the days that I find myself factoring in little bits of things to help me, but also giving myself a full permission slip backed with compassion to just rest and let my body find ease.
I really appreciate that you spoke to the evolution of your grief as well, because absolutely I've seen that with myself too. And I think as we familiarize ourselves with the ebb and flow of our own personal experience, the more that we're able to prepare and tend to the grief hangover when it does arise, because we know it's going to come, right? So I love that you spoke to that. When do you feel like you realize that this is not a setback in your grief? So, was there a milestone where you're like, wow, I've really been doing this grief hangover thing for a while now, and I've felt terrible, like I'm doing grief wrong. And then you actually came to this realization that it was just a normal part of the process. Did you ever have that realization like, oh, this isn't a setback in my grief?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of speaks to the evolution we were just kind of talking about. Was I definitely think it was in my second year, when I moved through my husband's death date for the second time and realized, oh my gosh, the next day feels exhausting. I feel drained. I don't really have the capacity to show up in my life like I usually do. And that's when it clicked into place for me that this is something that I feel we have to treat with sacredness, just like any other piece of our grieving process, and that we are not really given a roadmap, obviously, on how we're going to move through grief. And so when we have these moments and seeing the repetitiveness with certain things like this grief hangover, that we can just gently maybe try to accept that this is normal and drop all comparison. So I definitely think it was that second year, seeing that more repetitiveness of a few different things that made me realize this was more normal.
Mm-hmm. You spoke to feeling exhausted now in the years that have followed. And that's kind of how you associate your grief hangover and the feelings that you're having on that next day. What are some small, realistic, and like compassionate things that you do to support yourself through those days, through the exhaustion? And maybe what are some compassionate things that you did even in the early days?
Yeah, absolutely. I love answering this question because I feel like this is truly the foundation of a lot of the work that I do, that I encourage my clients to move through. And this is actually something I tapped into pretty intuitively that first year. I think a lot of that came from the foundation of the work that I had done prior to my husband dying as well. But what I told myself early on, that I tell myself now and even tell the women that I work with, is keeping it as simple as possible is the way to go. So the number one thing that I really prioritize on those days is making sure I get outside, getting sunshine in my eyeballs, feeling the fresh air in my nose, and really just grounding myself outside of the home. Because for me, on those tough grief days, I find myself in bed or trapped in the stagnant air and energy of my house. And so if I wake up that next day and I'm intentional about getting outside, drinking my matcha with the sun in my eyes, and just allowing myself to take a couple deep breaths, that makes all the difference. And then on top of that, welcoming in any type of gentle movement practice, whether it's going for a walk or any type of slow flow yoga asana, while still making room for rest and naps. I really tap into a lot of restorative yoga postures on those days, or even the somatic touch tools that I factor into my own practice. And then a couple other short little things that I do is I make sure I'm drinking water with minerals, even if it's just salt in my water, and making sure that I eat something with having full compassion on what it is. Sometimes those days look like I'm eating snacks, chips, ice cream, whatever it might be, to comfort me and not having judgment on those choices. And just allowing my body to know that even though there are these big emotions that I'm feeling physically, that we are still safe. And lastly, one of the biggest things that I do is sit with my breath and notice if there's any way that I can deepen the inhales or even lengthen the exhales. Because when we're in this place where we may be bracing or hyper or even hypo aroused in a different state inside of our nervous system, our breath is a quick way that we can come back into the body and regulate. So even if it's just lengthening out my exhales by one extra count, that truly helps bring me fully back in and meet myself with compassion.
So many wonderful self-care pieces of advice there. And you spoke to intuition, and I found for myself as well that intuitive need to get up and get out, even when I was tired, and it didn't need to look like anything crazy. But for me, it's just leaving my house and going for a walk and being in nature. I'm always very called to be in all of my senses, and then also providing myself an opportunity to even lay down. If I don't fall asleep, that's totally okay, but rest is essential in those days that follow.
I agree 100%.
For a new widow or a widow in general who worries that feeling so heavy again has kind of reopened the wound and made them feel like they're going backwards and they're regressing in their healing, what would you say to reassure them?
This, I think, is such a beautiful question to ask, Lauren, because I witness in my own grieving experience and the other widows I support, so often we can be our biggest bullies, right? We can tell ourselves, oh my gosh, I should do this or I should do that. Or, oh, I thought I was one place and then today I'm feeling the complete opposite. And the thing that I remind my clients of all the time is, just because you have a moment for a day or the heaviness arrives again, it is just a gentle opportunity and invitation for you to honor your grief. And it doesn't mean that you are going backwards. It doesn't mean that the healing that you've done, the work that you've done isn't still supporting you. It truly is an opportunity to remember that the grief is always going to be a part of us. It's always going to be something that we've integrated and that we get to hold with a sacredness because it's so much of that love that we still share with our person. And so in yoga, we often say that yoga is a practice of remembering and forgetting. And I feel like grief is very much that as well. We may get going in our lives and in our healing process and in our journey, and we seem to forget what it feels like to be in the depths of our grief or in the deep suffering type pieces that arrive when we're moving through our grieving process. And when we have those heavy moments, it's an opportunity to remember. And it doesn't mean that we are backtracking in any way. It's simply an invitation to feel and to honor your person in whatever way feels best to you.
You kind of spoke to this earlier too, but as time moves forward, do you find that it's easier to anticipate or prepare for the grief hangover?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%. I for sure do not schedule clients or kid activities or a lot on the day after big dates because I know now that I am going to need the space. And if for some reason it feels lighter and different, then hey, it's just an opportunity for me to have a day for myself to pour back into myself in a different way.
Yeah, all those invitations to just show up however you need to show up in that moment. I love that. What do you wish you could tell your earlier grieving self about these kinds of days when it feels overwhelming, when it felt scary? And I know for myself, it's like when you're in it, it's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. So what would you tell yourself now, that early griever in you?
These type of days lead us to a place of finding more healing. And I always come back to the philosopher Thich Nhat Hanh, how he says, no mud, no lotus, right? We cannot have these suffering, dark, murky, hard days without the light, without the flower blooming, right? Without the beauty that can come along with it. And so I truly believe that if I could go back and tell that little widow who was terrified of the days that hurt, to allow herself to not let them take over every ounce of what she had hoped for the future, because they are truly stepping stones to help her find what she has found today.
Gosh, beautiful. And it helps us build capacity, right? It helps us build a it's an opportunity really for us to be able to sit with all of the varying emotions, and it's a life skill.
Yeah, I agree.
My last question for you, and thank you. It's just, I love all the things that you've said. They're really, really insightful. This last one is to help our supporters, really, to help those around us better support us inside of our experience of grief. Is there anything you wish friends and family understood about the day after a milestone event, or anything you might suggest they do to show up for you on those days? I know I just had a group call earlier today, and we were having a conversation about our tribe and people showing up for us. And something that stood out on the call today was the women saying it's those who have really just stepped up and said, hey, I'm going to be at your doorstep in 5 minutes for a walk, or I dropped off a coffee. So what do you think? What are some tangible things that someone might be able to do to show up for you on those days?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question and conversation to ask and have, simply because I think we know from our experience that our supporters in our life sometimes feel completely lost on how to support us. And I think this answer would look vastly different, even for me, dependent on the day that I maybe had before. Because I know for me, there are times that I do just need my space and I need to be in what I'm feeling, and the simple acknowledgement of, hey, this may be a tough day for you, but I'm here for you is more than enough. Whereas there's other times where having a friend at my home or going on the walk or having that added support is exactly what I need. And so I think as a widow and a griever, I think one of the most important things we can do for ourselves to help the support people in our lives understand more is set those clear expectations around, hey, this date is coming up. Usually the days around the date are hard for me as well. I would love it if you could check in on me. If you don't hear back from me, please don't take it personally. And there may be space and time where I need you more. And there may be other space and time where I need to be in the sacredness with my grief. And to just offer up that dialogue so that they have a gentle understanding that it's going to look different, and to not set expectations, or so that you as a griever may not have expectations that are let down as well.
And it is so individual. And that's what I think adds to the complexity of grief and the complexity to our support system who wants to help us and may, not know the direction of where to take it. So you spoke to that very eloquently. Thank you sincerely for being here with me today and for speaking so honestly to that tender, complicated part of grief. I know your voice and wisdom will land in the hearts of many that are listening and that need to hear that they're not alone in these day after moments. And I think that people that are listening who may just be the support system or a griever and not specifically a widow are going to take a lot from this and may experience these things in their life as well. And so I just appreciate everything you brought to the table today.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I enjoyed this conversation so much and would love to have another one soon.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to connect more with Julia, you can find her on Instagram at Julia Warren Yoga. She also offers supportive yoga therapy programs and grief-focused offerings for widows and anyone navigating loss. I'll link her information in the show notes so you can explore the beautiful work she's doing in the world. And to each of you listening, if you've ever felt that crash after a milestone and wondered what is wrong with you, I hope today reminded you nothing is wrong. This is what love looks like. This is you navigating the aftermath of loss. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening. If this episode supported you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone either. As Thanksgiving approaches here in the United States next week, we'll be holding space for one of the most recognizable reminders of loss, the empty seat at the table. We'll talk about how we're going to honor what's missing while still allowing ourselves to be present to what remains. Until then, be gentle with yourself, sending a big, warm hug and lots of love. You've been listening to The Widows Collective. I'm Lauren Lentz, and it means so much to me that you spent this time here today. If you found comfort or connection in today's episode, I invite you to please subscribe, leave a rating, or share it with someone who might need a little support. You can also follow me on Instagram at I'm Sorry We're Friends and join my email list at laurenlentz.com to explore my one-to-one grief coaching, group program, retreats, and other tools designed to help widows navigate loss with understanding and guidance. I hope you'll join me next week for another conversation where we'll continue exploring grief, healing, and ways to reimagine life after loss. I'm sorry you're here, and I'm so grateful that you are. Thank you for being a part of this community. Your presence is an act of courage and self-compassion, and I'm honored to walk this path alongside you.